Greetings all and welcome back to the shed. So today I'm going to be cracking on a bit more with the old forks and shortening them, hopefully. The method I'm going to go with is the damper rod that's inside there. That's the stock rebound spring that sits on the damper rod. We're going to increase either with a spacer or probably a spring the length of this spring, and that will effectively make it in the stanchion. So if it's sitting sort of like that, we're going to lift it up, so it's going to make it sit like that. I'm exaggerating that a little bit, and that will effectively shorten the fork. So that's kind of the method I'm going to start with. So let's have a look at the bits we've got and how we're going to go about it. So then, this is what we have to play with. Obviously stanchion, dampener, stock spring, lower, fork springs. Now I think I mentioned before that let's make a bit of room. So I got these. I had a set of these are from an SE model spring, so these are obviously quite a lot shorter than the America springs. As I say, for the moment I'm not looking at upgrading to progressive springs or anything like that. I just want to get everything kind of together and set right before I spend money on springs. And I need to know what length springs I'm going to go for, because this is not just like retrofitting an existing setup. This is going to be somewhat butchered. So at the moment, that's why we're not using any progressive springs. But I've picked up a set of T100 springs as well that are on Fleabay for the princely sum of £3, and I don't know how long they are, but it'll be interesting to see if they're longer than the SEs. I imagine they're shorter than those. They might be the same length as these. I'm not sure. Big thanks out to John as well. He has sent me some extra spacers that go in the top. So if I do end up needing to chop these springs down a little bit to get them in, because basically I'm going to increase the length of a spacer here, which will mean the springs are going to have less stanchion to go down into. If I can get away with it, this is my thinking so far, if I can get away with using this existing spring, I'll put those in. Obviously I don't think with a couple of inch drop I'm going to be able to force, I might be able to, but we'll see, but force the standard spacer and spring in. So what I might have to do, rather than cut the spring, I could cut the spacer, which is, I know some people have cut the spacers to lower them anyway, but you should really always compensate the other end. Might get them in that way, or I could cut the spring, and that's going to stiffen up the spring a little bit and keep a bit more sort of preload on there. I'm not sure yet. I'm just going to have a little, I'm kind of just going to explore this as I go along. So in terms of what I'm going to use, some people use a sleeve to go over this. Now there are some holes here and here. I'm not sure if these are like for the oil as well, but I'm thinking rather, you don't want to cover them up. So I think the best plan is to use my SE spring, and I'm gonna, because they are pretty much the same, well, they are exactly the same diameter spring as the rebound springs, so I shall cut these and use these as the kind of spacer, if you like. And that keeps all the oil ways open. So that's what I'm going to do first, cut these down, and then we'll probably look at reassembling up from there and see what we can do. I need to decide how much I want to drop these by. Now I want to drop them quite a lot. I'd like to drop them 4 inches, which I think is going to be too much to be able to do this way without changing a stanchion. Most kits look like they have a 2-inch drop, so you'd cut this to 2 inches. I might try and go a bit longer and just see what happens. and kind of just like dry build them back up and just see if they're going to work. I'm not sure. This is kind of, I'm going to be exploring and discovering this as I go along, so forgive the rambling and all the rest of it, but first things first, let's cut spring down. Probably just use one for both because I've already got the nice ground end. See if I can replicate this the best I can to the other end. So yeah, I'll do both of those, and let's crack on from there. So that one is now cut to 3 inches. So what I've got there now is if I want to have 3-inch drop, which still might be too much. 2 inches seems to be the standard, but then I've got this extra. This, if I use the stock spring on there as well, that brings it to a nice, well, I say to the 4-inch drop that I wanted. So I've got a bit of wiggle room, and then if needs be, and I can't go any more than 2 inches, then I can cut this one down. So let's do the other one. That's both springs cut now. So they're just the 3-inch length springs there, and the stock inch ones I'll just leave off for now. Just see what the 3 does. See if that's too much. Get the legs together. Might just give everything a bit of a clean up, getting fork oil everywhere, and then have a little bit of a dry mock up just to see if I'm going the right way or if I'm not. Right, that actually took a little bit longer cleaning everything up, but everything is super clean on the inside and outside, and de-oiled, and that's just made life a lot easier when I'm playing around with all this. Still got that one to do. So I've just loosely assembled it. Obviously I'm taking some key components out. There's obviously no fork seals in there or anything at the moment. It is literally just the damper rod, the longer spring, stanchion lower with the bolt in it, and the bolt was tightened down there just to get a look at where I'm at now. I haven't even looked at the spring going in here and the spacer as well yet, but just to get some rough ideas. So the overall length now of this is, and again very roughly I've just held a tape measure against the one the Bonnie outside and the SE inside and this one, but 85 centimeters full extension, compared to the Bonneville, which with it all sort of like sat on the ground and loaded, is roughly 78 centimeters. The SE 79, that's jacked off the ground though. So, and again very roughly just with the tape measure up. So a little bit longer here. Actual stanchion length, if you like, what's showing 41 centimeters on here, There's a 41 on the standard Bonnie. I forgot to measure the SE, that's inside, never mind. Compressed is 79 centimeters, so if we compress down, that's 79. So if we look here, the distance we've got of travel is about 2.5 inches. Yeah, just under 2.5 inches. So I think that's kind of, I want to say, I think that will be enough travel for the forks. We'll soon find out. I think I'm going to have enough clearance as well underneath, you know, the bottom yoke. So I think we're okay-ish. Obviously still just trying to process things through. In terms of the spring wise, so if we got the stock America spring, so I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do here yet. Oops. Let's try and do this one-handed. So, stock America spring. Whoops. In. Stock spacer in. So we've got a fair bit more than we used to have hanging out. Now, this spring, I think it's going to be too short, because I haven't got anything to go longer on the spacers. I mean, I could chop a bit on those. I'd rather keep the spacer all one piece. So the America spring, I don't know if I've got enough. Don't know if I'll be able to push that in and get the cap on. Possibly. If not, don't know whether to chop the spring or the spacer. So if I left the spacer as it was and chopped the spring, that would allow me to keep the preload on the spring, possibly be a bit more preload, obviously, because it's short, length is shorter, so it will stiffen the forks up a little bit. Chopping the spring will make it a bit stiffer as well, I think, so that will stiffen the front up a bit. Or I could leave the spring as it is and chop a little bit, well, not actually chop a little bit, chop a little bit off one of the spacers, keep the spring length the same and put the spacer in a little bit shorter. I don't know what the best option is. What I might do is just wait and see. I imagine the Bonneville springs that I've got are going to be about the same length as the SEs. I'm not sure. We'll see. If they're somewhere in between, that might be a nice compromise. If I just put the foam down, I'll pop the SE spring in, and we can have a look at how much space there is. I think there's going to be too much. Again, I don't know if you're going to be able to see. Oh yes, you can. But that is the spring and the spacer in there. So even on full compression, the spacer's not even there. So that's not going to work for me. Yeah. Right, so I haven't obviously got the Bonnie spring to measure it yet. I could take it out of the other bike, but I can't be bothered. So the SE spring is 28.6 centimeters. America spring is 45.3. So if we have a look. So I think that is going to be that is all stock America, stock spacer, stock spring, which is a little bit long coming out there. I don't know if I could compress that enough to get it in. We'll see. That's the SE spring with a stock spacer and a slightly shorter spacer. That's, don't know what effect that would have on the handling. Just laying stuff out. I think I'm going to see what the Bonnie spring comes in at. I'm going to guess it's probably the same as this, looking at some of the measurements. I think what I'm going to have to decide to do is whether or not I trim. So some people reckon, so whatever you've added to the damper rod spring, so let's say that's 3, added 3 inches, so remove 2 inches from your existing spring. So that probably just, it's not the same amount, so you're going to stiffen up the front end by removing slightly less and compressing the spring a bit more. Maybe that's the way to go with it, and leave the spacer stock. So what I need to do next though is clean this one up and reevaluate. Okay, as promised, that's the standard America fork with everything completely stock, and this is the one I've butchered. So we've got, see how much. So I'd say is just shy of just under 2.5 inches there, as they stand, so they're fully extended. The other thing that's turned up is the Bonneville fork springs, and as you can see, so that's the SE at 286 millimeters, Bonneville 310, and the America spring 453 millimeters. I'm thinking this is the way I'm going to go. I think now keep this spring the same, and just shorten the spacer. I think that's the way I'm going to do it initially, unless anyone has any other ideas or any issues with that. And then that way, if I do want to upgrade to progressive springs, I'll just get a set of progressive springs for an America, or I'm guessing Speedmaster has the same, and then I can use the spacers I make up. So the spacers that John kindly sent me, thank you John, you star, I can now cut those down and leave the stock spacers as. So let's get rocking. Actually, I need to disassemble that and put the other spring on. Right then, as the fork's on, they're a little bit higher than I want, to be honest, a little bit longer rather. I want them to sit a bit lower. At the moment, obviously, it's kind of just, everything's just resting on the ground and then down a tiny bit. There's no weight on it, but they're still a little bit high. And as you can see, I've gone, what's that, probably 1.5 inches, maybe a bit more, maybe just over, yeah, about 1.5 inches through. That's about as far as I would want to go. I'm not overly happy with that, but I've also got to get the fork caps on top as well. So I haven't cut the spacers yet. I am thinking I might just try and put, what did I put in there? 4-inch springs, didn't I? 3-inch springs. Might do 4-inch ones. See what I get. Yeah, I might do that. I'm just going to play around. So I haven't cut down the spacers yet until I've got this worked out. The other thing I'm trying to bear in mind, ta-da, the mag wheels turned up. So don't forget, I'm losing 1 inch there eventually. So what I would like to do is have about 1 inch poking through with this wheel, so when that wheel goes on they can go down flush, So that's kind of my thinking. It's hard to see it here, but it's not quite sitting where I want it. I want it to be a little bit lower, but I am running out of time, as always. So I think that as far as I'm going to get on this one. So a little bit frustrated. I've got nowhere near as much done as I wanted to. So that's the end of this video. I would have really liked to have got a bit further with that. I still need to play around. I'm just really short on time at the moment. I've had tumble dries to repair, half marathons to run, practicing for a 20-mile run, a 20-mile run to do, preparing myself against coronavirus. It's been very busy couple of weeks for me, so I've not had as much time to dedicate in the shed. I do apologise, but I'll crack back on with that. So I'm going to have a think on the forks, what I want to do with that, and then next week, I don't know what I'm going to be doing next week, but we shall see. So see you next weekend. Take it easy. Until next time.